Hello there, and welcome to episode 5 of Kolinization Project. In today's episode, we start it off on the launch pad, where we are launching a rocket with relay satellites for relaying data around the solar system, I guess. This rocket contains 3 separate satellites, each with their own solar panels, reaction wheels, engines, and relay antennas. We as of right now, we don't have the large relay dishes yet, not the medium-sized dishes, but we do have the small relay dishes. So the in-between between the medium and the Apollo-style dishes. Anyways, we're on to our second stage now, and you may have noticed at the beginning, the parachutes deployed a bit early because I forgot to check my staging. Always remember to check your staging, and I didn't. But we were trying to recover the booster for reusability, because reusability is always good. But we couldn't because we didn't have any means of landing the booster. I did want to... I'm actually not sure if I put fuel tanks in it that couldn't be drained, so I could use them for a propulsive landing, but the parachutes were probably essential to this mission. Not the mission itself, the recovery of the booster. So you can see I'm using the resonant orbit calculator for telling me where the apoapsis and periapsis of the orbit should be for a geostationary communications network. This is actually the first time I've ever set up a geostationary relay constellation. So I don't think it was 100% perfect, but it's good enough, in my opinion. Anyways, we're coasting up to our apoapsis to perform our periapsis kick to bring us onto a orbit which will allow us to deploy each of the 3 satellites and get them all into a triangle shape in terms of the signal lines for maximum efficiency, I guess. We don't actually have a reason for this being geostationary. I just thought it might look better if it's geostationary. As you can see, I'm just doing a quick time warp to make sure it is actually geostationary. And we have just deployed a second satellite. This is the same process as the last satellite. We deploy it, we perform our apoapsis kick. No, not apoapsis kick, periapsis kick. And switch to the next satellite and repeat. Anyway, this is the third satellite going around the planet and performing our circularization. You can just see the second stage go past there really quickly. Anyways, the next launch is going to be if it's happening anytime now. Oh yeah, I'm just seeing how it's a perfect triangle. Anyways, the next launch is going to be one of a completely new launch vehicle. I decided to start naming my launch vehicles. So this one is called the Polaris because I had nothing else to name it, and that was the first thing that came to mind. This is a fully recoverable launch vehicle, the first one of this series. And basically, we're going to be able to recover the first stage and the second stage. Not the fairing or the payload, but I mean, those things can be easily replaced. That means it's not a fully recoverable launch vehicle because of the fairings, but you can't really recover fairings in Kerbal Space Program. So I honestly think this is the closest you can get to a fully reusable launch vehicle as possible without using something like Starship, which doesn't have a fairing, rather a cargo bay. Anyways, we're performing our circularization, and you may notice I forgot reaction wheels on the probe. So thankfully, we still have attitude control because we have the RCS thrusters. Since this is a fully recoverable launch vehicle, we need to actually recover the first and second stages. Right here is the first stage. We are not doing propulsive landings to maximize the payload delivered to orbit, but we are using parachutes because it's a rather light launch vehicle, and parachutes are quite easy to throw on and reuse. Anyways, now that the first stage has landed and recovered, we can move on to the second stage. We're deploying our satellite, which will scan the surface of Kerbin for altimetry, I think. It's just an altimetry scanner, probably for a ScanSat contract, I think. Anyways, we can switch back to our second stage and recover it, I guess. Now this is returning from orbital velocity, so we do have some re-entry shock heating effects, but it's fine because the engine can take more than enough heat just for atmospheric re-entry on Kerbin. We are using parachutes again because this is again a rather light thing we're recovering here. So parachutes are more than okay to reuse, or I'm just saying they're they're better than propulsive landings when you're landing something that light. Anyways, on to the next launch. This launch will be This launch will use a 2.5 meter rocket with 2 SRBs on the side. I haven't actually named this rocket because honestly I'm not very creative with names, and I think we're only going to use this launch vehicle once for this mission. Anyways, it's the title and thumbnail. You may have noticed that we are going to Minmus and back, obviously, because we don't want Jebediah and Bob to be stranded in space, because we don't want to lose any more Kerbals in this series. You can see we dropped the first, second, and booster stage, and we are not trying to recover any of this because I'm actually not sure why I didn't put parachutes on any of this, but probably because it was too heavy of a launch vehicle. Anyways, we are performing our orbit insertion right now. After that is done, we can head off to Minmus. Now, if you watched the last episode, you may have remembered that I talked about how life support is a thing because we're playing with USI life support. And Minmus is on the very edge of what you can do without supplying the Kerbals extra habitation and supplies. Habitation, supplies, and supplies. That's what I meant. Supplies is obviously food. Anyways, we're performing our Minmus insertion. No, not our Minmus insertion. Our what's it called? The trans-Minmus injection. Yes. So we have the we have 2 little mini packages of supplies and hitchhiker storage container, so our kerbals have lots of room to stretch their legs on the long journey to Minmus. It's not that long, it's only like a week, but that's actually a pretty long time now I think of it. Anyways, just messing around with the distant object enhancement settings. So if we actually look at the sun, the skybox will dim, like in real life. Like, you can't really see the stars if you're looking directly at the sun, even in space, because if you look at the sun, you'd be blind, for one, and second off, it's just like on Earth. You can see the stars at night when there's no light, but there's light in space. Anyways, we're at Minmus, so we can perform our orbit insertion and plot our landing burn. I'm always trying to aim for the places that we haven't been to with the probes to maximize science gain. And all in all, essentially get the most science possible and visit new biomes. I tried to land in this little area between two of the hills, and that worked out pretty well because Minmus, these are part of the flats of Minmus, and they're obviously flat. So landing is pretty easy. It's not like a Mun landing where orbital velocity is 800 or so meters, 600 or so meters per second. Orbital velocity is only around 100 meters per second. And we have touched down on the surface of Minmus with crew for the first time. Yay. We can perform some science now that we're on the surface and get Jebediah out to plant his flag. Now, I think this is the final time I am switching flags in this series. We are using the Galaxies Unbound flag, the interplanetary flag. We're just getting Bob out to go inspect the booster that somehow survived impact. It wasn't that bad of an impact, so it's not a big surprise It's not a big surprise that it survived, but it's interesting nonetheless. But we do a little biome hop because we have more than enough fuel. I'm slowing this down to 1x speed because something interesting happened here. Yeah, the lander tipped over. If you saw last episode, you might think that this is a repeat of events from last episode. Thankfully, Minmus has very low gravity, so the reaction wheels and RCS thrusters on this capsule are more than powerful enough to get the lander back upright and not stranded crew on Minmus, where a rescue mission would take way too long to complete. Because the rescue mission would take more time to build than kerbals have life support. Anyways, after our velocity relative to ground is low enough, we can just perform a little flip with the reaction wheels and bring the lander to an upright position. And we have landed in the lowlands. I have visited this with the Minmus 1 probe, but we still get science from EVA reports, surface samples, mystery goo, and materials bay. And I'm not sure if you can see this or not because of YouTube compression, But if you look over there where little things showed up saying CAX A, that is actually the black hole in the galaxy's abound. Now, the black hole is pretty small relative to basically everything, but the jets of superheated plasma were more than large enough to be seen from Kerbin. Anyways, we have taken off the surface of Minmus, and we are heading home. Now we are on a high latitude relative to Minmus's equator. So we're not getting the full boost of the rotation of Minmus, but we have more than enough fuel, so we could launch into a retrograde orbit, maybe, and probably still have enough fuel to get home. But we don't have enough. We can't perform a return from Kerbin from Minmus because of our high inclination orbit, but we can perform an ejection burn off of Minmus and essentially use and burn retrograde relative to Kerbin once we have exited Minmus's oh my god, I can't pronounce anything, sphere of influence, to bring our periapsis down and into the atmosphere. And we're doing that right now. I tried to aim for the Kerbal Space Center using trajectories, but I couldn't really, and we were far enough out to where the tiniest amount of delta V usage would make our orbit or our landing prediction go from continent to continent, basically. So I landed in the middle of the ocean, but the rescue teams should take care of that. Anyways, that will be the end of the episode. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.